autumn air biting at my cheeks as I stood outside the grand iron gates of my brother's wedding venue, a sprawling estate that looked like it had been plucked straight out of a fairy tale. The golden sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the manicured lawns and glittering fountains. It was supposed to be a day of celebration, a union of love, family, and joy. But for me, it became a nightmare etched into my soul. The guard at the gate was tall, broad-shouldered, and unyielding, his face carved from stone as he blocked my path with an authoritative glare. "Name," he barked, his voice cutting through the gentle hum of distant chatter and music spilling from inside. I hesitated for just a second too long, clutching the crumpled invitation in my hand. "It's me," I stammered, trying to sound confident but failing miserably. His eyes narrowed, scanning the guest list on his clipboard before shaking his head dismissively. "You're not on here." My heart sank. Panic surged through me like wildfire, but before I could protest further, a small crowd began to gather, family members, friends, acquaintances, all watching intently. Someone laughed nervously, others whispered behind their hands. And then came her voice, sharp and cruel, slicing through the tension like a knife. "My mother." "Oh, look who thinks she belongs here," she sneered, her tone dripping with mockery. Beside her, my sister joined in, her laughter ringing out loud and clear. "You've always been so desperate for attention, haven't you? Well, this is what happens when you try to force your way into places you don't deserve." Their words hit harder than any physical blow ever could. Humiliation burned across my skin, hot and unbearable, as tears pricked the corners of my eyes. I wanted to scream, to fight back, to tell them how wrong they were, but instead I froze. Frozen by shame, frozen by fear, frozen by the realization that even my own blood saw me as unworthy. As the whispers grew louder and the stares more piercing, I felt myself shrinking, not just physically, but emotionally. In that moment, standing there under the weight of judgmental eyes, I wasn't just denied entry into a wedding. I was stripped bare, reduced to nothing more than a punchline in someone else's story. The pain wasn't just about being turned away, it was about being reminded, yet again, that no matter how hard I tried, I would never measure up in their eyes. And yet, amidst the chaos, something stirred deep within me. A spark of defiance flickered to life, faint but undeniable. This wasn't going to break me, not completely. Not yet. The humiliation didn't stop at the gate. As I stood there, rooted to the spot, my mother stepped forward, her heels clicking sharply against the cobblestones. Her expression was one of disdain, her lips curled into a sneer that made my stomach churn. "You think you can just waltz in here without an invitation?" she spat, her voice carrying far enough for everyone nearby to hear. "This isn't some charity event where we let just anyone in. You need to earn your place." She paused, letting her words sink in, her gaze raking over me like I was something dirty she'd stepped on. "And frankly, you haven't earned anything." Her words cut deeper than any blade ever could. Each syllable dripped with contempt, each sentence designed to strip away whatever shred of dignity I had left. My sister chimed in next, her laughter high-pitched and cruel, echoing off the walls of the estate. "Seriously, do you even know how embarrassing you are?" she said, tossing her perfectly styled hair over her shoulder. "You show up looking like this." She gestured vaguely at my outfit, which suddenly felt cheap and inadequate despite hours spent picking it out, and expect people to take you seriously? Please. You're lucky they didn't call security already. Around us, the murmurs grew louder. Some guests exchanged smirks, while others openly gawked, their expressions ranging from pity to amusement. A man in a tailored suit leaned toward his companion, whispering audibly enough for me to catch. "Who even is she?" Another woman tittered behind her champagne flute, her eyes gleaming with barely concealed delight at the spectacle unfolding before her. Every laugh, every snicker, every sideways glance felt like another nail being driven into my coffin of shame. But it wasn't just the strangers whose judgment stung, it was the familiarity of it all. Growing up, I'd always been the odd one out in my family. While my siblings excelled in academics, sports, and social circles, I struggled to find my footing. My mother often dismissed my efforts as half-hearted or not good enough, and my sister took every opportunity to remind me of my shortcomings. They weren't outright abusive. They rarely raised their voices or resorted to physical punishment, but their constant belittling had a way of wearing me down over time. It wasn't about what they did. It was about what they didn't say. The absence of encouragement, the lack of acknowledgement, the silent implication that I would never amount to anything significant. Standing there, surrounded by people who either pitied or ridiculed me, I realized something painful. This wasn't new. This wasn't unexpected. Deep down, I'd always known I wasn't welcome. Not truly. For years, I'd clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, things would change. That one day, I'd prove them wrong and earn their approval. But now, staring into the cold, unsympathetic faces of those who were supposed to love me most, I understood the truth. No matter what I did, I would never be enough for them. Tears blurred my vision, but I refused to let them fall. Instead, I clenched my fists tightly, nails digging into my palms until the sharp sting grounded me. The anger bubbling inside me wasn't directed solely at my family, it was aimed at myself. Why had I come here? Why had I believed, even for a second, that today would be different? I should have known better. I should have stayed home. But even as the thought crossed my mind, another voice whispered softly in the back of my head, a quiet rebellion against the storm raging within me. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance to reclaim some part of myself. To stand tall, even if only for a moment. Because if I walked away now, if I let them win, I'd be surrendering not just my pride but my very sense of self. And I couldn't let that happen. Not yet. Just as I was about to turn and leave, defeated and humiliated, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. A sleek black limousine glided smoothly up the driveway, its polished surface reflecting the setting sun like liquid gold. The engine purred quietly as the car came to a halt, drawing the attention of everyone around, including my mother and sister, who immediately straightened their postures, smoothing their dresses as if preparing for royalty. The driver stepped out, opening the rear door with practiced precision, and then she appeared. Wait, no. Not she. It was Ethan Carter, my billionaire friend, emerging from the limo with the effortless grace of someone accustomed to commanding attention. Dressed in a custom-tailored navy suit that accentuated his broad shoulders and sharp jawline, he exuded an aura of power and confidence that seemed to silence the entire gathering. His piercing blue eyes scanned the crowd briefly before landing on me, lingering just long enough to convey a flicker of recognition and something else. Concern? Sympathy? Whatever it was, it sent a jolt of electricity through me, grounding me in the moment. Ethan's presence was magnetic, and the transformation in the crowd was immediate. Guests who moments ago had been laughing and whispering now scrambled to compose themselves, adjusting ties, smoothing skirts, and plastering polite smiles onto their faces. Even the guard who had barred my entry snapped to attention, his earlier stern demeanor replaced by a deferential nod as Ethan approached. "Mr. Carter," he greeted, his voice tinged with awe. "Welcome. We've been expecting you." But Ethan didn't spare him more than a passing glance. Instead, he strode directly toward me, his movements deliberate and unhurried, as though the world itself had slowed to accommodate him. When he reached me, he stopped, towering over me slightly, but not in a way that felt intimidating, more protective, like a shield against the storm I'd been enduring. For a brief moment, our eyes locked, and I saw something there that caught me off guard. Kindness. Genuine, unfiltered kindness. It wasn't pity or condescension, it was understanding, the kind that comes from shared experiences and battles fought behind closed doors. Without saying a word, Ethan extended his arm toward me, offering it as both a gesture of solidarity and an invitation to join him. I hesitated, unsure whether accepting would make things worse or somehow validate their ridicule. But then I remembered the countless times Ethan had stood by me when no one else would, the late-night phone calls after particularly brutal days, the quiet reassurances when I doubted myself, the unwavering belief he had in my potential even when I couldn't see it myself. He wasn't just a billionaire. He was my anchor, my confidant, my reminder that I mattered, even if the rest of the world forgot. Taking a deep breath, I slipped my hand into the crook of his elbow, feeling the strength in his grip as he guided me forward. The crowd parted instinctively, creating a path for us as we moved toward the entrance. Whispers erupted again, but this time they carried a different tone, all mixed with envy, curiosity laced with respect. My mother and sister stood frozen, their earlier smugness evaporating as they watched Ethan lead me past them without so much as acknowledging their existence. Their faces flushed with embarrassment, mouths agape as they struggled to process what was happening. For the first time that evening, I felt a sliver of triumph, not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally understood my worth. Ethan's arrival wasn't just about saving face, it was about showing me, in his own quiet way, that I deserved to be seen, valued, and respected. And as we stepped through the gates together, leaving the judgmental stares behind, I realized something profound. Sometimes, the people who truly care about you aren't the ones shouting the loudest. They're the ones who show up when you need them most. As Ethan and I crossed the threshold into the opulent ballroom, the air seemed to crackle with anticipation. The chandeliers above cast shimmering light across the marble floors, and the soft strains of a string quartet filled the space with an elegant hum. Yet none of it compared to the electrifying tension radiating from the crowd. Heads turned in unison, eyes wide with disbelief, as whispers rippled through the room like wildfire. People who moments ago had dismissed me as insignificant now scrambled to adjust their perceptions, their gazes darting between Ethan and me with a mix of curiosity and thinly veiled envy. Ethan's presence commanded authority, but it was the revelation he delivered next that sent shockwaves through the gathering. With a calm, measured voice that carried effortlessly across the room, he addressed the stunned audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his tone warm yet firm, "allow me to introduce someone very special to me. This is Alex, not only a dear friend, but also the visionary behind one of the most groundbreaking startups of our generation." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Startups? Me? I felt my cheeks flush, partly from embarrassment and partly from the surreal nature of the moment. Ethan continued, unperturbed by the murmurs growing louder around us. "Alex has spent years working tirelessly to develop technology that will revolutionize sustainable energy solutions worldwide. What many of you may not realize is that this young woman standing beside me has already secured partnerships with Fortune 500 companies and attracted millions in venture capital funding, all while facing challenges that would have broken most people." The weight of his words settled over the room like a thunderclap. My mother's face went pale, her lips trembling as she struggled to reconcile the image of her unworthy daughter with the accomplished individual Ethan described. My sister's jaw dropped, her earlier mockery replaced by a mixture of disbelief and guilt. Even the groom, my brother, looked genuinely taken aback, his expression shifting from confusion to something resembling admiration, or perhaps regret. Ethan turned to me then, his eyes softening as he added, "But beyond Alex's professional achievements lies a heart of incredible resilience and generosity. Despite everything, Alex has always chosen kindness over bitterness, compassion over resentment. That's a rare quality, and it's one I deeply admire." His words struck a chord within me, stirring emotions I hadn't fully processed until now. All these years, I'd internalized the narrative they'd imposed on me, that I was less than, unworthy, incapable. But hearing Ethan articulate my journey aloud, framing it not as failure but as triumph, forced me to confront the truth. I wasn't defined by their opinions. I was defined by my actions, my perseverance, and my ability to rise above the toxicity that sought to drag me down. The room fell silent, the weight of Ethan's declaration hanging heavy in the air. Then, almost imperceptibly, something shifted. One by one, people began to approach me, not with pity or condescension, but with genuine interest and respect. An elderly woman who had once ignored me at family gatherings clasped my hands warmly, congratulating me on my accomplishments. A distant cousin apologized profusely for doubting me, admitting she wished she'd taken the time to get to know me better. Even my brother, who had previously treated me with casual indifference, pulled me aside later to express his pride, in his own awkward, halting way. It was overwhelming, to say the least. Part of me wanted to retreat, to shield myself from the flood of validation that threatened to undo years of self-doubt. But another part, the stronger part, recognized this as a turning point. For so long, I'd allowed others to dictate my value, to shape how I saw myself. Now, standing in the midst of people who were finally seeing me for who I truly was, I realized I had the power to rewrite my story. And I wasn't alone. Ethan's unwavering support reminded me that true allies exist, not to rescue you, but to remind you of your strength when you forget it yourself. As the evening unfolded, I found myself smiling, not out of relief or vindication, but out of gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons learned, for the friendships forged, and for the knowledge that I was enough. More than enough. The aftermath of Ethan's revelation lingered in the air like the final notes of a symphony, resonating deeply within me. As the initial shock waves subsided, a profound sense of peace enveloped my spirit. It wasn't just the external validation from the crowd that transformed my outlook, it was the internal shift, the realization that my worth had never been contingent upon their approval. Standing there, amidst a sea of altered perceptions, I felt a liberation that was both exhilarating and terrifying. For the first time, I saw myself through eyes untainted by familial disdain and societal expectations. In the days following the wedding, I reflected deeply on the interactions that had unfolded. My mother, usually stoic and unyielding, had approached me with a hesitant apology. Her words, though laced with remnants of pride, carried a sincerity that surprised me. "I misjudged you," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Perhaps I've been too harsh." It wasn't a full redemption, nor did I expect one, but it was a start, a crack in the fortress she had built around her emotions. My sister, too, showed signs of change. At first, her attempts at reconciliation felt mechanical, almost rehearsed. Yet, over time, her gestures became more genuine. She invited me to coffee, asking questions about my work and listening, not to criticize but to understand. These small steps towards mending our fractured relationship were tentative, but they held promise. Amidst these familial shifts, Ethan remained a steadfast figure in my life. His role transcended that of a mere benefactor. He became a mentor and a confidant. Through our conversations, I learned the art of forgiveness, not as a gift to others, but as a release for myself. Forgiveness, I realized, was not about condoning past behaviors, but about freeing oneself from the chains of resentment. With each forgiving thought, I felt lighter, as if shedding layers of accumulated pain. Moreover, Ethan encouraged me to channel my newfound confidence into avenues of personal growth. Under his guidance, I expanded my startup, pushing boundaries and exploring innovative solutions that aligned with my passion for sustainability. This endeavor not only solidified my professional identity, but also reinforced my belief in my capabilities. Yet, perhaps the most transformative aspect of this journey was the redefinition of my self-worth. I came to understand that my value was intrinsic, woven into the fabric of my being rather than stitched together by external accolades. This epiphany was liberating, allowing me to navigate life with a renewed sense of purpose and authenticity. As I look back on that pivotal day, I see it not merely as a moment of public vindication, but as a catalyst for profound personal evolution. The path to self-discovery is seldom linear, fraught with trials and tribulations. However, it is in overcoming these challenges that we unearth our true strength. Today, I stand not as a victim of circumstance, but as a testament to resilience, armed with the knowledge that my worth is immutable, irrespective of external validation. This journey, marked by both struggle and triumph,